Good evening, Chairman, members of the committee, and so many people here tonight. This is a wonderful turnout that shows interest and involvement in an issue that is near and dear to not only the residents and visitors of Troy, but the entire capital region. I live in Albany, in the South End specifically. I identify myself as a woman of African descent. I am a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother. Professionally, I have worked in the field of ending sexual violence. In doing that, I have worked with, I have trained, I have locked horns with criminal justice professionals. I have worked in not-for-profits and a state agency, and am now an independent consultant. Part of my involvement and my reason for being here tonight, you heard Dr. Green mention several things about the Albany Community Policing Initiative. I'm a member of the Albany Community Police Advisory Committee, one of the at-large members who has been active since 2011. I am the facilitator and the moderator of the nearly quarterly community forums that are held throughout the city of Albany so that people have a chance to actually meet and talk with our Albany Police Chief, command staff, address questions about their own neighborhood, find out about what initiatives are going forward, and to make recommendations for additional change. So in terms of being I was not at Kokopelli's, I do not live in Troy. I don't know where all this feedback is coming from. Thank you, that helps, thank you. As far as my introduction to Troy, New York, did occur in 1967 when I came to Troy as a student at Emma Willard. I received a scholarship at that time, and as Dr. Glick mentioned, before some of you were a glimmer or thought of, back in the days where lots and lots of things were going on, I actually was in Troy from 1967 to 1970. And some of the things I heard about going into the city, participating in different communities, I thought was just something to keep the Emma Willard girls away from the city folks. Little did I know when I came to work in the capital region starting in 1998 that the same stories were going on and the same divisions about where one could and could not travel safely in the city of Troy. I would come to conferences, I would come to concerts, I would come to restaurants, and people would caution me about where to park, where to walk, how to comport myself, depending upon how I was dressed for that particular occasion. If I was in jeans and t-shirt like tonight with my hoodie on, or my wool business suit and silk blouse. The idea that I have worked for a great number of years with and around law enforcement, the numbers of times that I have been stopped and asked to identify myself, sitting in my motor vehicle from the neck up, depending on the size of my earrings. Gender can't always be told, but the numbers of officers who would come up, tap, 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 hands on gun, because they saw the color of my skin. And it was always amusing to turn around and say, "Hi, Joe." And they would say, "Oh, Jackie, oh, it's Miss Williams. Oh, it was my trainer for the day." Because at that moment, they recognized me as an individual, as a professional, as someone who was working with them. A moment before, I was a suspect. And it doesn't matter whether I lived in Troy or anywhere else. It was simply the color of my skin. As Dr. Glick said, this is what happened in the 60s. This is now the year 2014, and I want to share a couple of stories that were told to me by people who are not here tonight, but asked if I would bring their voice forward. One woman and her sister talked about being in the Troy area and being stopped both on foot and while traveling in a vehicle. One of the women is much, much darker than myself, has more curves, and has long hair, long locks. As she was walking in a business section, a police officer accused her of conducting business in such a way to imply that her business was illegal and had something to do with a sexual nature. Her sister, who was similarly well endowed and very good looking, was waiting outside of a convenience store for her son being a young man. And the police officer accused her of covering up and potentially trying to run interference for something her son was doing. He was in the convenience store making a purchase. When she replied to the officer that was what the nature of their business was, the response was, "Well, you better move along or I'll beat you just like the other woman." The idea that these two women did not go forward and file a complete report to the police department, which is what I asked, and that's something that we encourage and assist people in doing in Albany. I was told that that isn't the way to do things in Troy, that there is no mechanism, and even if a person did complain, that it would go nowhere. So the faith and the respect, if something is done to an individual, there is no belief or trust that something would happen. You've heard earlier that a letter has gone to the Department of Justice. One of your committee members asked about experience with external reviews. There are hosts of resources, whether it's from the Department of Justice, the FBI, individual law schools, criminal justice professionals. If you simply search external review for police action, you will find even the police professional associations, the International Association of Chiefs of Police. There's a multitude of ways of doing that. One only has to look. The idea of a Citizens Review Board, you heard, the community policing is not just a name, it is an ongoing process. Albany has been involved in it since 2009, 10. We're still working on it. It has lots and lots of bugs. The best part is we, the community and the police department, are working on it together. There is a functioning Citizens Review Board where any individual who feels they've been disrespected can request a meeting, and now mediation is part of that, where the officer is invited, the resident is invited, they have a conversation along with the citizens reviewers to come to some type of an understanding, and generally it is a misunderstanding. Public safety is a community crisis which can be resolved. It's an illness which is not fatal. Troy is not unique in that regard. Troy is not alone. Troy need not remain where it has been. W.B. Du Bois had written something over a century ago. Now is the time, not some other more convenient time. We've heard that. We know that. For those of us who were alive in the 60s and the 70s, we've heard that. We've done that. This is now the time for Troy to do that. And look at all the assistance that you have. Thank you.